Strong Dads wants to thank 4Speed on 50 for sponsoring today's show. If you like classic cars, great food, and a taste of Americana, you have to visit 4Speed on 50's Diner, located on Route 50 in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Stop in today for a meal and an experience you won't soon forget at 4Speed on 50's Diner. Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merrill, Hutchinson, and Carl Andry coming to you today. A little quiet. The cat got your tongue or what?
I don't know.
I don't know. What are we going to talk about today? I don't know. We do have it.
This is a topic very near and dear to me.
Yeah.
Very.
And you might be out there wondering, what are these idiots talking
goofy
about here? We've been talking and just being silly about how to start this show, but we're going to do a show on something that blows my mind with you.
Everybody says that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that you struggled with shyness.
Painful shyness.
Yeah, painful
shyness.
Anxiety-ridden and everything else.
Yeah.
And so, and I've shared some of my struggle too, right?
With your anxiety?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
which
being
I didn't
shy.
put those two together. I just was painfully shy.
Yeah.
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 And it is an anxiety that
Yeah.
goes along with that.
Yep.
There's a lot of sources for that and a lot of things we'll get into. But
Yeah.
this is really about how to overcome that. One of the things as I first talked to you about this was how to work a room. And I want to say right off, this is not about manipulation. And we'll get into that. I don't want that to sound like manipulation, but that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. And, there are natural extroverts, natural salesmen, natural people who can just get conversation. And when you're talking about working a room, I mean, the thing that really comes to my mind from some of our conversation is how you had to mechanically learn how to do that. There are naturals who just come in and
They
it
come
happens.
into the world that way. They're naturally that way.
Yeah, but you could still be somebody who can work a room or engage with people, but you got to learn a few things. I think we're going to cover some of that today.
It's a skill, and what I'd say is you have to have the desire.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are perfectly comfortable being absolutely quiet.
Yep.
And not being conversationalist at all. And I've had a few. In fact, one of my high school buddies was that way. We could go out for an evening, and he might say 2 words.
Yeah.
And it was just the way he was. Me, I wanted to engage with people. I wanted to be in the conversation and enjoying that type of comfort.
Yeah.
In a either a one-on-one or a room full of people. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about how I overcame that and why and how if you're one of those people, how you can do it too. Yeah. So if you want to,
let me thank some sponsors. I want to thank Quality Auto Mart, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and 4Speed on 50 Diner for sponsoring the Strong Dads podcast. Also, just want to continue to thank you guys. We want to thank the good Lord who gives us an opportunity to have these messages and just life and breath itself. So we want to just be grateful for that. Gratitude goes a long way. And I don't always do a great job of practicing it, so I want to do better.
Everything hinges on gratitude.
Yeah,
and those your sponsors have been great to you.
They have been great, and just also we've got our banquet coming up. Let's see, this will air
13th.
Yeah, so this show will actually air after our banquet.
Oh, so you can't use these techniques.
So you can't. Yeah, it'd be too late. Man, I got to use that at the banquet. I
wish I'd have known that.
Yeah, but we're excited about our banquet, and because Rock Solid Families has been together since 2018, and last year was our first banquet, and I was nervous about that.
It was incredible too,
and it was. Why did I worry about all those things? We had a great night. It was fun, and it was so well received by people in a community. You never know how you're going to be received, or whether people like what you're doing or like you or whatever. And the fact that the number of people that came out and supported the mission of Rock Solid Families was just a huge blessing. And so this year, we've got, it's actually planned to be a little bit bigger.
I can believe that. I'll tell you, the biggest problem we had, we dallied. We sponsored a table.
Yeah.
And we dallied around a little bit. We got busy with other things. Finding somebody hasn't already planned.
Oh, that was.
It's like we're gonna have to go out of state to get somebody.
Yeah. You know? That's part of the problem. They all start inviting their friends, and then if you sponsor a table, your friends have already been invited.
There are
so
a lot of
like,
people that we know, even on peripheral, that they've already got plans to be there. So you're going to have another rocking event.
Yeah, it's going to be a good event, and I think it speaks. I don't say this enough. We actually live in a great area. We really do. It's got its downfalls and its pits, okay? But when you look at our community,
demographics,
they care about good things for family and kids and marriages. Again, no perfects at all, but just there's a core to this that makes this small little community come alive.
And you're in a great spot.
Banquet.
There's just not a lot of resources out there. And on top of that, you're both great at what you do.
Well, thank you.
So
thank you.
That's a big factor.
All right. So,
which on that note, I don't know if this is appropriate or not. People can donate. They don't have to come to the banquet. I don't know if you have a mechanism for Rock Solid Families through this
I don't pump it as hard on Strong Dads. We do on Rock Solid Families podcast a little bit. But yeah, like if you guys like what you hear and you know what we do in terms of the coaching and stuff.
If you've been helped.
But I don't think people always realize we never turn people away for money reasons. Yeah. And so if you come in and you're like, I need some help, but I can't afford to do this, we'll do an honest check. What we found is you can't give just free stuff away because people treat it like it's free. And they skip appointments and everything else.
Right.
And so that's kind of the human nature of a lot of us.
Skin in the game.
Yeah. And so we'll say, well, what can we afford? And if they can only afford X dollars, we have been, that's why we do these banquets. We have underwriters that come in and help make up the difference to pay for the bills and the staff and everything else. And so, so if you're interested in just supporting the mission that we have here, you can go to rocksolidfamilies.org. Over on the right-hand side, there's a little menu button there. Just click on that, and there is a donate button. You can click on that, and it will gladly take your money.
Highly recommend it. It's a great investment in your community.
Yeah,
by investing in them.
Yeah. All right. So. There are, Carl, I know you're going to get into a lot of this, but I will tell you, I run into a lot of this with the men I'm working with.
Men are predominantly, it tends to be a male issue.
Yeah.
Tends to be. And that may be that I'm more familiar with men. Yeah. Women seem to be natural chatterbox, or women, I mean, I don't know if that's the right term to use, but they tend to be the social arm in a marriage. They tend to be the social connection.
Yep.
Because they naturally do these.
Words tend to come easier. Their verbal part of their brain just seems to be more enhanced or developed, and so the words come easier. And so, guys can have few words, and a lot of times they don't feel comfortable. Like, is this going to come out of my mouth okay?
Yeah, and let's say, when you're, people think, well, it's a form of humility to be shy or to be quiet. But inside your head, at least for me, there's you call it a silent struggle.
Yeah.
Mine was more like a scream at different times. You're so wrapped up. Really what it is self-centeredness. It's not humility. It's actually an absorption with self-absorption.
And let me make sure I understand.
Sure.
You're centered on yourself because you're afraid you're going to look stupid, or the words aren't going to come out right, or something like that.
You don't know what to say.
Yeah. Okay.
You're nervous about awkward moments. I'll back up, and I don't want to get too far out in the weeds on this, but for me, there was things that happened in our household that drove me to isolate. Away from my family. I felt like the odd person out, and I thought what was happening in our house was my fault. I didn't understand what had happened. So I had an old station wagon a neighbor had given me that I always wanted to take up the engine apart on. I was a very young boy, and it was out behind our garage, and I would sit there. I would isolate in that place. So I had a message that there was something wrong with me. So it took a long time to accept that I had, I went to therapy and things as I got to be an adult, that I had PTSD, and I still don't really completely buy that. So I brought trauma, I brought a lack of self-confidence. there was this thing that, watch what you say, and maybe, nobody really, you shouldn't say anything because, so it was a combination of things that when I got into a social situation, it was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think a lot of guys, you miss a lot in life, as you're looking at, like, you want to go to this event, like maybe the banquet. And
right.
A lot of times people who are shy, the first thing is, who am I going to talk to? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? It's going to be so awkward. And that was really the impetus for me to decide to change. Because I recognized if I stayed the way I was, that I was going to miss a lot in life. And on that note, I'm not recommending this. I don't drink, but there's an interesting statistic that people who frequent bars earn on average about 20 or 25% more than those who don't.
Yeah.
Now you think, well, it's not that you drink your way.
We're not recommending drinking.
It's the social aspect.
Yep.
It's the network. The network is what's so important. Having more friends, more connections.
Yep.
And that's what drives it. The other side of that is if you let it dominate your life, the shyness, if you withdraw or don't engage because of that, or worse, when you do, you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
And that reinforces this loop that's going on in your mind. Well, that's just going to drive you into isolation.
Yeah.
Depression, anxiety, all those things. So, shyness was a terrible problem for me.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the loop. It's like any sort of phobia. The more you stay away from it, the harder it is to get in. And so the next thing you know, you are in your 30s or 40s, and certain things start to pass you by, right?
Right.
That opportunity to get that job or to meet that girl or whatever, you go, well, that passed. There were plenty of girls that I never. You've actually talked about. You used to see girls, and you'd pick the hottest looking girl, and you had the courage to go there and talk with him.
Actually, I was a coward.
Yeah.
Now I say that because, and it's what we're going to, and this is going to, people like you said, they have a hard time seeing me as ever being shy. Because you know me now. When I came out of it, it was like I had just won the lottery.
Yeah.
Once I understood and started to develop the tools and the techniques and got away from understanding how to get out of shyness, I went the other way. But what I figured out was if I went back, disco was big back then.
I can see you in bell bottoms.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Keep going.
Anyway, my mom said, if you don't learn anything else in life, Carl, learn how to dance, because my dad couldn't dance. So I reckoned, even as shy as I was, that was another tool that I needed in the toolbox. I needed to, and if you're really shy, you're really self-conscious. Again, it's self-absorption. If there's anything about this, it's what the Bible talks about is you must die to self. And I'm going to say this. I want to make this clear. This is a ministry of sorts for me. I don't think I've ever parsed it that way to you.
Yeah, no.
But how I look at it, if I want to caution, you can take this and use it and abuse it. It really can. I'll say there are people in churches, certain people in churches that go there because of a large congregation, and they're looking to play.
That's a manipulation.
They're looking to work the room
about.
in that respect. So when I blossomed, if you will, I'd walk in the room and I'd say, I'm going to pick out the best looking girl in the joint.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if I was going to walk across the room, if I got shot down, all the other guys, I said, well, of course.
Yeah.
I thought,
but man, that guy's got some,
yeah. But if you're going to get shot down, but if you walk across the room and I don't mean to be mean, but ask some mediocre girl and she goes, nah, and well, that's a real walk of shame, But I also recognize that most of the really attractive women would come in and guys were so nervous about asking that they would dance with their friends and they would leave.
Yeah.
And they wanted to dance. They wanted to have a good time. So it was actually a coping mechanism that I rationalized that if I'm gonna fail in a way that at least everybody would expect.
Fall up.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of falling down. Yeah. Yeah. So, and all of a sudden life opportunities start to pass you by, and then that fulfills other self-defeating prophecies of I'm never going to have the life I want and so on. So, what, I don't know, like where do you want to go with that? Like, how did you start taking it apart so you knew what you had to do, and then putting it back together in a workable plan for you?
Well, the first thing I realized is that most of the time when you're shy, and now I'm speaking from my side of it, what you're doing is you're trying to wedge yourself into a conversation, and you feel like you have something to say that other people need, that if I just said this, people would like me.
Yeah.
If I just said this, if I could just tell, like you've got something in your mind, you want to say it. Actually, that's the wrong approach.
Okay.
It really is getting out of yourself. And this is there's a lot of techniques here, but I can tell you, Linda will vouch for this. There's been evenings we've gone out with people and we've sat at dinner for 2.5 hours, and we get up and the other couple could not tell you one thing about us. Not one thing. That's, if you're looking like, it's if I just told them about myself, if I just did that. Now, I'm not saying there's not places to interject stories about yourself, but I learned you got to really die to yourself. You got to be more interested. And I had a sincere desire. To me, people are like books.
Yep.
There's a great story in every person, and you just never know when you're going to stumble onto it. It is amazing. We kind of talked about this with your father-in-law. It's amazing once you flick that open, flip the lid open on somebody, just open the door a little bit. People are anxious to talk.
Yeah.
Most people, and I said this before, I read that line in Walden's Thoreau. Thoreau is Walden's. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. So I started to see people. I realized that the way I felt was the way a lot of people felt.
Yeah.
A lot of people would go to events and things like that, and they were so. I just I don't know how we want to attack this, but I can tell you how I worked out of it.
Yeah. Well, I want to just have a little input there is how since I've known you, one of the things, Linda and I have even teased, not talking bad about you, but we've teased.
People do.
Yeah. How you always inquire about us and our life. What's going on in your life?
Yeah.
Right. And
I try to. Yeah.
And you always do it with authenticity. And I know that because you don't start feeding your storyline.
Well, sometimes I do.
Well, but we know each other well enough now that we can share stories back and forth. But you always like, so what do you do with that? Or tell me what you like about that, or what's your input on that? And then you listen. And then you recirculate it back like for some clarifications to make sure you understand. And so that's just something I watch you do it in Bible studies. There's always a shy man or two in a Bible study.
Try to pull out
and you do it better than anyone. You do it with intention too. Like I know how to do that. I'm aware, but I don't always practice it. Like sometimes that quiet guy, the study could be over and on the way home, I'll be like, oh, we didn't hear anything from so-and-so. Yeah. And you catch it. So you're very good at just asking, what's going on in your life?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I want to know. I'm nosy.
Yeah.
My wife says, you'll ask anything. Yeah, I ask anything. And I'll say, it is amazing once you develop this, it is amazing what people will tell you.
Yeah.
When we were on vacation, real quick, we were on vacation, and this happens to a lot of places. I watch people, and I think because of the way I grew up, always trying to read the room for the tension and things, to see what was going on. I was always trying to interpret what's going on. So sometimes in those meetings when I'm there, I'm watching a person's eyes. I'm watching their body, their posture or something. And I'll pick up something that says, it's time to ask that person a question. There's something in there. Well, we were out west, and I went out to get gas. We'd had a long day, and I went in to pay, and the girl behind the counter, I thought, she needs to talk, and I got in trouble, because the kids were all tired.
2 hours later.
20 minutes later, they're at the gas pump, and there I am, and this woman just she just pouring out. She's just, she's just sobbing. She's just one of those walking around, just ready to burst.
Yeah.
And I just listened, and I talked to her, and so it gets you in trouble sometimes, but the human element, it is kind of tragic. How many people, I've said many times, people underestimate the power of a smile. I've been at a point in my life where a smile made the difference. Just somebody acknowledging you. So I call it, I said it's on here, it's a ministry. It is really a ministry. You don't have to be out evangelizing and everything to really impact the world. I don't think people really give this a lot of credit, that connecting with a person. We were at church. I watch a room, and I'll talk about the techniques that I used early on, but I watch a room. I saw an elderly guy 2 Sundays ago. He was walking around that sea of people, and I know that look. He was in amongst all those people alone, looking to connect, and I go over and I shake hands.
Yeah.
I was that person.
Yeah.
If you're shy, terribly shy, that's who you start with. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah.
So we're kind of jumping around here. So
Yeah.
I could tell you how I attacked it if you want.
Yeah. Well, I do, but I want to add something. When you are in a group of people and there's a lot of social interaction, does that charge your batteries or does that drain your batteries?
Today it charges my batteries.
Okay.
But it's also draining. And what's sort of sad is in a group of people now, I can't hear as well.
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
Yeah. The background chatter with my age and everything, it's really tough. So I find myself really having to pay attention, really having to work, and that can be tiring
Yeah.
and frustrating.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than hearing about half of a conversation. And you don't want to say, like, that sounds great. And they just said their uncle died. It's like whatever it is. So that's a new aspect that I'm wondering how, probably hearing aids or something, but I've heard people talk about and they talk about the loss of hearing and how it's tied to dementia because you can't engage.
Yeah.
There's something really healthy about this social engagement we have, the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
That when it's not there, you can decline very quickly.
Yeah.
So this isn't just about how to work a room. It's about health. It's about longevity. you
Yeah.
know. So,
Well, I mentioned that because I think a shy person, so, you had it built up in you that you wanted to talk. You had something to say. There are other
well,
people.
I thought I did. I wanted, let me say, I don't know that I had anything to say, but I felt in order to be liked, I needed to say,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and impress or get their attention or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's other people that feel like they might be required to talk.
Yeah.
Like people are going to ask me about my job, but I have to tell them. And I think sometimes that's exhausting.
Yeah.
When you really don't want to do it, right? And so I've been in that position before.
Yeah.
Where, I do a lot of talking and listening for a living, and there are just times where I don't want. I spent my career teaching and in
bucket's
counseling,
full.
and I go out to a social place. Like Linda can go all the time, anytime to social places, and it builds her. There's not most Friday nights, I'll say, "What do we got?" And if she says nothing, I go, yes. And so, and I feel kind of guilty. Like, what do you mean? You just reject people? No, it's not that. I just, sometimes I don't want to talk anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a little different. But I have been in plenty of social places when I'm at our Bible studies, when I'm in our small groups, when I'm at a party of some sort. My battery does charge. Like that's
When I stumble into something,
Yeah.
especially if somebody's doing something I've never heard of, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
I mean, the questions fly,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I don't want to overburden somebody, but I find when you're excited about what somebody else does,
Yeah.
that really excites them. So many people walk around. One of the questions I have is about what you do. Whatever it is, you tell me what you do. What about that is that the average person doesn't understand is difficult because all of us look at things and we kind of take it for granted. And a good example of that sort of is a guy that I worked with at Cincinnati Microwave. He was in a wheelchair. He was paralyzed, and he had an accident, killed his friend, and broke his back. And I said, Doug, what is it about being in a wheelchair that the average person doesn't understand as far as difficulties and things? What is it that we would never think? He says, the grain in a carpet. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, you get in a long hallway, there's a grain to the carpet. So the chair
Oh yeah,
it's like
that's never even occurred to me.
No, so that started a whole conversation.
Yeah.
I didn't even. So you just those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And I will say
Yeah.
we can jump ahead. I developed a series of questions over my life.
Yeah.
Some are goofy, some are thought provoking, some are extremely personal. But I've found, and that's one of the things I wrote down here, you can say almost anything to anybody almost any time as long as you're smiling.
Yeah.
It's like, you're a really goofy, whatever, it's like, and then look at somebody, but it is.
I am. Yeah.
But to be authentic, to look at somebody and say, and another one of the things I say is, I probably shouldn't ask this, so forgive me ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so I preface it that way, and I'll walk right into something deeply personal, and it's really.
Do you have some of your sample questions?
Yeah, some of them are really goofy. One is I formulated this off of fear factor. If I gave you a 5-gallon bucket of fresh elephant dung and a spoon, and for $1 million, would you eat it?
The whole thing?
So
No. A bite? The
the
whole
whole
thing.
thing, 5-gallon bucket for $1 million
Oh,
of that fresh elephant dung.
my gosh! Like right here, I'd have to say no, but if I had to think about it long enough and look at my bills,
It is interesting. And what happened was I watched Fear Factor, and there's a chance of winning $50,000. And I was watching what these people were doing on national television, and how it was just humiliating.
Yeah,
Do you have no personal dignity? Yeah. And I thought to myself, what would people be willing to do? It says something about it. So what I've found, and I haven't written down, it's an interesting conversation starter, because you find people go, oh, no. About 70%,
How much?
60% will say, well, how long?
Yeah.
How long do I have?
How many bites?
I don't know if I can eat that much. Well, and at a certain period of time. Then there's questions like, well, what did the elephant eat? Me? I don't care. It came out of the fun factory of life. It's like, I don't care if you ate prime rib. It's still poo. It's poo. But it's interesting to hear when you start talking to people about what they value.
Yeah.
And you look at that and go, so that's one of them. Another one related to that is, if I walked up to your house, cold, you didn't know I was coming, and I say, Merrill, Linda, you walk out right now with the clothes you have on. I don't know if I've ever asked you this question, but Draghies, we were talking about. Yeah. I was at their house just before it burned.
Yeah. You had nothing to do with that.
No, she said later, I would answer it different. Yeah. But that doesn't mean anything to all of you. But here's $500,000 or $1 million. I would probably, with you, I'd say $1 million. $1 million, you walk right now, you don't go back in. Would you take it?
Yes.
Okay. Some people go, no. All right, let's negotiate. $1.5 million. I'm just curious. Mm-hmm. So some people.
You mean I should have held out?
No. If they say no, then I wonder, is it a price thing? Or is it the sentimental? There is no price to it,
right? And
you find out again, it's a conversation starter that people chime in. A lot of people would say, "Oh, I would," I would, They don't value. They don't have sentimental stuff. They don't look at it that way. So there's a series of questions like that over my life that I've come up. What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you? When I'm at the nurse's or the doctor's office or with a cop or police officer or somebody like that, what's the strangest thing that's happened to you? And it's just this way of kind of starting the conversation, because you ask somebody, what do you do for a living? And they go, well, this, and you can follow that up. But if they say, well, I'm a tax accountant, the conversation kind of dies, So with a question like that, well, they tell you, and then, well, what's the backstory on that? What, and then how did it turn out? So I learned the art of the question. That's what I call it. It's the art of the question. And it's the antithesis of what I originally thought I needed to do. And that was to talk and to contribute my side. What I want to know is what's in you.
Yeah.
And if you get people talking about themselves, it's the best topic. It's the topic they know the most about.
Yeah.
And I am curious. I want to know, and I want to have that dialogue, and it is a never-ending thing. I mean, you can really, as long as you are authentic, And as long as you genuinely are interested in, and people know if you are or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. I think that the idea of just asking people about them and they get the opportunity to talk about them is it's part of the way that you function in counseling as a counselor, getting people to share those kinds of things. How often do you feel like you run out of it's not going well? They're not responding well, and you just go, okay, there's not much here? Or do you really find it that you don't ever hit that dry well?
It's rare. And I will say something else that's become a part of my pattern, and it was a learned thing over time. And the best example I can think of is we're flying back from Phoenix. And it may sound strange. I'm not one of those people that gets on a plane and has to talk to the people on each side of me.
Right.
I really don't want to be a burden. In fact, I am, it sounds silly. I am kind of an introvert. I'm more of an introvert than I'm an extrovert. It's just that I genuinely want to connect with people. Mm-hmm. So early on, I had a group of people that I would target, and I'll say why I did that in a moment if we want to go that way. But I sit down on the plane, and a lot of times I just get a feeling I'm going to talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. I don't always have that, but I wait. There was a woman on my left. There was a guy on my right. I thought, I think it's God's leading. And I said, it's become like a ministry.
Yeah.
And I wait. Now, I didn't feel that I could open the conversation, but she did. And by the time we got to Cincinnati, she was, and this was a good thing, she was sobbing. She had just buried her mother.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She had been raised in a church, but she didn't know anything. And I mentioned David. She didn't even know who David was. I'm thinking, how do you not know who David and the Goliath is?
Right.
And she had all this, and that was the connection there. So sometimes I don't feel the leading, and I think it's okay. Sometimes people are not comfortable with silence. That might be what needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I asked that question. Like, do you find, at what point are you pulling stuff out of people, and that gets to be weird and burdensome? Yeah. And so there's a point where you go, okay, we're good. Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or wait. That's my point. Wait, lay back. And sometimes you got to let people kind of come to you.
Yeah.
That once they get comfortable or once they realize, and the worst thing, I want to make it clear, the worst thing you want to do is have like a list of questions. Rat, tat, 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 tat.
Now this is,
there's no authenticity to that.
Hey, I'm going to do the elephant dung one. You ready?
Yeah. Next up, what do you do for a living? That must be fun, kind of thing. But it's something. Let's go back. So I realize that I need to perfect this. I need to learn these tools. So the first thing is a great handshake. We've talked about that.
Yep.
You got to master that contact. So in a lot of settings, you've got about 20 seconds, maybe less, for somebody to make their decision about you.
Yeah.
So if you walk up and you're slumped shoulders and you have no confidence, I was talking about how shy I was. You can imagine most people in that situation, they're kind of closed off. They're meek. They're doing this. They're already too nervous. They're all everything like that. You got to change that. I mean, you've got to make a conscious decision to stand up straight, to look somebody in the eye, as awkward as it may be. Yeah. But you're going to look somebody in the eye and you're going to shake that hand. And you're going to do, if you don't know how to shake a hand, find somebody that does and learn from them.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, again, too many fathers don't teach their sons that.
Yeah. Eye contact is huge, right? I mean, when you can train somebody to have good eye contact, I think the handshake follows. Because it's a connection already.
It's a connection.
And there's strength that comes into the hand.
Right.
If I can't make eye contact with you, I'm going to give you a limp hand.
Right.
Right. And so I've always talked about, that with my own kids, that we've done the handshake thing, but it's quit looking at the floor.
Yeah.
I need this connection right here.
Yeah. So you need that connection, and it may be wrong or right. There's a certain amount of sizing up a man does with another man.
Yep.
So you are either going to be down, like and there's going to be that posture, there's, even in your eyes. So it's important, and it may take all that you have.
Yeah.
You may be one of those people that just talks to the table when you talk to answer somebody. And again, you got to have a sincere desire not to be the way you are. Shyness is something that you can overcome. Shyness is something that is a set of tools. And for me, I was not naturally. I remember thinking in school, though, there was a valedictorian, and Dad would say, "Why aren't you more like him?" And I used to think that you just had it. You just had it. I didn't understand studying. I really didn't till I got out of school, and then I became an ace. It was just really weird. But, you think that this just happens. No, there are, like studying, there are tools or techniques. There's a pattern. There's a discipline. We accept this in so many areas of our lives. If you set out to be a profession, you've got to learn. This is another thing that you can learn.
Yeah.
So
you talked about some different things to do. I think it is important that, especially early on, you go ahead and be okay with this becoming a mechanical process.
Yeah,
and
you're going to fail.
Yeah, and to have a script, not that you read, so to speak, but to have your one or two questions. It's okay, right? I mean, because these are the things you're going to get comfortable with. You're going to kind of know how they're going to flow out of your mouth. And then through comfort, you will get unlimited approaches to people. Right. But, when I first started teaching, I was nervous about being in front of a class.
Yeah.
I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to say the words wrong. The kids aren't going to like me, whatever it is. I remember I had a student teacher, or the guy I student taught under, Kenny Wilson. He was just like, just go up there and be yourself, Merrill. Like, you're one day ahead of the kids. Like, he was never worry about being smarter. You just stay one day ahead of the kids. And he talked about the idea of being able to laugh at yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was huge because
it's tough.
If you're nervous about making mistakes, the idea of laughing at yourself, you're going to cry if you make a mistake. You're not going to laugh. And so the idea of actually, when you make a mistake, laugh at it and point it out. Can you believe I just said that?
Yeah.
Because it makes everybody else in the room more comfortable, and it instantly takes the tension out of you. Right. And so I had to learn that.
Yeah.
Like, I had to learn, I don't know if I shared this with you or not, about learning how to do math problems in front of my class.
No.
Yeah. So math was not my deal. Right. But in science, there is some math. And I was always nervous about screwing up the math problems that I had as part of my science.
Yeah.
Because math wasn't my deal.
Yeah.
And so one day I'm on my prep period, and one of my teachers who became good friends with, he taught calculus, and his room was catty corner to mine. And his door was open. And I hear him, and he's like, "Okay, somebody give me a problem." And some kid rattles off some calculus problem. And he goes, "Okay, let's try to figure this thing out." And the class and him start tackling it. And multiple times he's like, "What am I thinking of? That's not right here." And he's admitting his mistakes, and he's doing this real time in front of the kids.
How is he able to do
And
that?
I'm like having a panic attack
Oh,
him.
man, how
because
unprofessional.
I know the answer all the way through, like 3 days in advance, because I don't want to look like an idiot.
Right.
And when I just saw him do that, I said, "No more. No more. I am not practicing any more of these math problems. I don't care if I get them wrong, because my kids get them wrong.
Yeah.
And they feel like idiots. That's why they're afraid to ask the questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to look like an idiot in front of the class."
Right.
And so I started doing whatever the math problems were. I'd be like, "Okay, guys, I haven't seen this one yet." Even if I did look at it, I'd be like, "Oh, okay." And I learned to fall right in front of them and then laugh at it.
Have a good time.
Yeah, because we're all human.
That's the authentic side of it.
Yeah.
You think you got to be Superman, and that's not going to work.
Exactly. It was phony.
Right.
It was phony. And it took me to a whole different level of being okay with teaching and who I was.
Right.
I still don't like, I still get nervous at our banquet if I make a mistake. But now I'm conscious, and I'll be like, "Do you believe I just said that?" You know? But it's taken a long time to get there.
And when I was as a boy, I would remember a nervous chuckle and run it through my, oh, that sounded so stupid. You sounded so stupid. And you would run this through your head and, you know, and for years. I mean, I'm serious. Things stuck with me, moments, because I was so self-conscious about, you know, trying to make an impression, you know, the reality is most people don't care. And I'm going to say something else. As life goes on, you've got to become who you are more and more. And I remember one of the most hurtful things was when I was very young and still really shy. I was talking, we had a little get together. I was in a youth kind of group. And one of the people there said, "What are you, a hillbilly?" Because of the accent, you know? And I remember just feeling like, gosh, you know, and I tried so hard to get rid of that. And you've never seen it. We went to Nashville years ago and the waitress came up, and if I'm around it, it just comes out of my mouth. And she said something about the spatial, and I said, "Well, I'll have the spatial." And she looked at me like I was mocking her. You know, I wasn't. But there is that side of me still, and it just hurt. You know, and it's like, gosh, you know, you're just so self-conscious. You got to die to self. And the best way to camouflage that, if I could call it that, is to turn the conversation outward, get interested in the other people, get interested in their experience, ask the questions, and take yourself out of it. Yeah. And people will think, and I'm not saying again to manipulate, people will think you're the greatest conversationalist in the world, and you may not say anything about yourself in the entire evening. Yeah, they did all the talking. They do all the talking, and there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. So some of the things that I did, and it may not sound connected. I took a public speaking. I got into public speaking, and as a shy person, it sounds really weird. Most people are more afraid of public speaking than anything else. Like it's the number one or number two fears, and they say usually more people are afraid to speak at a funeral than to be in the box. You know, so but I found it was really weird for me. I was more comfortable in a room, in front of a room of people, than I was one-on-one. Because if you had some reason to be there, whether it's memory work or you're developing a training or whatever it is, there is a detachment there, and you have this set of things to go through it. So public speaking helped. People were more accepting of that, but it helped me deliver and develop the ability to talk or to tell a story or to be more concise. I'm not always so well that on here, but it actually created a little bit of an insulation from the personal side. Yeah. That was always so fearful, sitting one-on-one with somebody, but in front of, so taking public speaking. I read books on sales. Frank Betker's How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Sales. I believe that we are all in sales. I've told you that. When you're in a job or you're sitting across the table from somebody or you're on a date, whatever it is, you're in sales. And the ability to sell yourself, or you're an idea, or you're a product. I hate to say it that way, but that's really what you're talking about. And those techniques, there is some validity to that. Yeah. I found that, most everybody's asking, even when they're talking to you, what's in this for me? Yeah. And if they come away from the table feeling like somebody really listened to them, you've made a friend. Yeah. Well, you talk about sales, and I think it's somewhere in sales, people have to experience something that's of value. Right? Like, right. Whether I'm bringing value to them, or I have something valuable within me that I'm giving. So there's something that's got to be of value. It's something in it for me. So I think that's right, that you got the sales part. We all have a sale, and what is it? Well, what value am I bringing to this? If I don't think I'm going to bring any value, I'm probably just going to be quiet, right? I mean, and you got to understand how I think sales is, and again, you're in it when you're married, you've got an idea for a vacation. The ability to speak in terms that the other person can appreciate, that resonates with that person, that's a gift. Yeah. That is what sales is about. Marketing is about that. It's not about manipulating people. It's about somebody has a need. They may not even realize that need completely, but if you speak in terms that they can relate to, that they can put together, that something that touches in them, then that's sales. Yeah. You've done something. And that may be, they just need somebody to talk to in that moment. Yeah. If you go to the average get-together, an average banquet or whatever it is, there are a lot of people there that they're just hoping somebody would talk to them.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other things I did early on. I looked for people like me. I could spot them, and that was the easy fruit for me to learn the craft. I would see the person along the side of the wall, white knuckling their drink.
Yeah.
And I knew that person, they needed somebody.
Yeah.
So I walked up to them and I would start conversing with them and I would start asking them questions. And what I found was the best thing to do is don't ask a yes or no question. That's a sales technique.
Mm-hmm.
Ask a question that leads to another question or leads on,
Yeah.
If you ask, do you like red?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, how about yellow? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where kind of the sales side of it came into. I also learned from that the power of touch, appropriate touch. If you watch a good salesperson or somebody who makes people feel comfortable, if they get a chance, they're going to touch them on the shoulder or on the arm, or whatever. Touch is a big deal.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people may not be comfortable with it. You got to honor somebody's space.
Yeah. And I would be cautious across gender.
You got to watch that, right?
Yeah,
Especially
in today's world.
Today's world. But people are so isolated. I see it with in nursing homes and things.
Yep.
People become sort of a product that they're moving around, and people need touch.
Yep.
They need touch, appropriate touch. But there's something there about connecting with somebody, and once you develop some ability here, you start getting more comfortable with it. The more comfortable you are with it, the more comfortable they will be with it.
Yeah.
It becomes sort of, again, before when you're really shy, it kind of spiraled out because it fed on itself.
Mm-hmm.
When you become more comfortable with this, it does the same thing. People
Yeah.
become more comfortable with you.
Yeah.
And it is shocking what people will tell you and how they, and I just look at, like I said, like a ministry. People just, I'll give you an example. And I watch the names. I was at head of the men's ministry at the church years ago, 20 years. We're going back 20 years ago. And we had that big event where we had Joel Sonnenberg come in. And after it was a huge thing. They had like 450 something in the main sanctuary and over 300 for dinner. And it was a great event. I was really riding high. And everybody left. And I'm picking up some things except one person. And that person comes up, and they were always so jovial and everything like that. Hey, can we talk? I said, sure. I motioned to one of the chairs, the one in the pew there. Now, have I ever told you this?
No.
So he went in first, and I turned in my seat, and I'm coming down, and I hear this noise. And I look over, and this man, a wail came out of him. In an instant, he went from jovial to just absolutely wailing.
Crying, yeah.
He was in so much pain. And I say, this is a ministry to me.
Yeah.
Of sorts. People are walking around. You may save a life. And I truly believe I have at different times, just noticing, catching somebody, talking to them, just making them feel that somebody saw them, somebody heard them. So that's the power of this. And again, it's not about manipulating people.
No.
So,
yeah. Carl, I would just appreciate you sharing part of your walk through that and really overcoming it. And I don't know if you have any more on there that you wanted to touch on. I didn't want to
no, I think that's
cut things short.
We could go on. I would say the one thing I did have on here, which goes along with the thing, I believe you should read widely. At least have a source where you get the day's news. It's just helpful. I can probably, this sounds arrogant, but I can probably talk on about any topic, at least some part of it. I'm going to have I rarely run into somebody that drops something out that I go, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
So it helps having a broad base of knowledge as far as different things. I'm naturally a curious person, but at least stay up on current events.
Yeah, and not to share what you know, but to be able to take in the conversation and be engaged with it.
Ask questions.
Yeah, yeah. If you're instantly telling them everything you know about it, you become the know-it-all. But that, and which is then more about you than them. And so I think it is important. I like to know a lot about, a mile wide, inch deep on a lot of different topics because of that reason. I want to make a comment about Small talk. And this goes out to a lot of men, more so than women. I hear this phrase occasionally. I don't do small talk. And I've really come to realize, shame on you. Small talk is where you get in.
That's where you start.
Small talk is where you break ice, where you actually can let somebody know that you're paying attention. It's where it all starts. You can't, with very few people, especially men, can you go deep fast. Okay?
You know, the only place I've seen that happen consistently is like the checkout line in Kroger.
Yeah.
People who don't think they'll ever see you again.
Yeah.
And you have a brief encounter, and I open up that thing, I'll yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That has happened so many times. But in a situation like you're talking about, people kind of close off and they think, no, I don't do small talk.
Yeah.
You're just flagging that you just want to disconnect from the world, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's important, small talk, and entertain it, and then it's up to you whether you want to take it deep or not, but it's actually where you show people that you do care. And you talked before about I read the room and I read people. And that's part of what my job is too. Like small talk is, I'm not paying attention so much about the weather you're talking about. I'm paying attention to your eyes, your energy, you're leaning forward, you're out, because then I can work off of that. Man, you wore out today, aren't you? And the next thing you know, you're down to, I'm wore out. I mean, do you know what's going on in my life? We're not doing small talk now.
No, not small talk.
Yeah.
But on that note, two things that came to mind while you're saying that. When you're talking to somebody, let's say that you met somebody at the table, or you're sitting and standing in the room, maybe you've been to the buffet or whatever it is, and you've met somebody that just started this small talk.
Right.
Give them your attention.
Right.
Give them your attention, because as you start to do this, and I did this, you may be looking like, well, them over there, like what's going on over there. Or can I want to talk to them. Everybody wants to be in the in crowd.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. You've got somebody you're talking with. There may be a point to disengage, but while you're talking to them, again, you're talking about eye contact when you first meet them.
Yep.
Keep that.
Yep.
Keep them special in your crosshairs. You keep them. That's your point. Don't be looking left and right. Who are they doing that? What's going on over there? Because what you're saying now to that person is you're not significant. You're insignificant. I really don't care what you're talking about, or I'm more interested in what they're doing over there. You have a responsibility in this. I'm an encourager. I think you know that. So I look for that. That's another part of this. It's not false or anything like that, but if I get something about somebody and I see that there's a special quality, I like to encourage that. Even if I've just met them, it's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. You must have really worked hard or whatever it is.
Yeah. I want to jump that conversation a little bit out of the shyness. What you just shared is critical in a marriage. The number of times that a couple will talk and not communicate is incredible. What I mean by that is your wife comes home and you say, hey, honey, how are you? Or how was your day? And she continues to hang up her coat, walk around, put her purse up.
Do that.
And I might be doing the dishes over there, and there's no eye contact. And I will tell you, there's no real communication. I remember early on in our marriage, Linda's a very busy person. She likes a lot of things. She feels the need to get a lot done, right? And I came in and I said, hey, babe, how are you? And she looked at me a little bit and she was talking, okay? And I was paying attention. And then she said, how are you? And I started talking and she started doing the dishes. And I stopped. I just got quiet. And she just kept doing the dishes.
She didn't notice.
And I said, stop right now.
Stop.
I said, do you really want to know how I am or not?
Just doing the courtesy kind of thing.
Yeah. And again, it was just one of those things. It wasn't pre-planned or anything. But the point being is you got to do this in your own home.
Yeah.
Working the crowd is one thing. How about doing it in your own home?
That's and that's one of them I've got written down. And I'm going to tell you, you've got the wrong motives. Let me say this. You've got the wrong motives if you go out into a crowd and the people there get better treatment, more attention, more conversation, more interest than you give to you. There was, I think I mentioned on one of these podcasts that the book The Flying Boy, and my dad was guilty of that. Other people outside the home got more patience, more interest, more conversation, more engagement than he did in his own home.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, I'm going to say this, then you're driven by pride, you're driven by ego, you're wanting acclaim, you're wanting attention, you're wanting all these things. And that's the bad thing about this. Once you turn that tide, once you turn the table and develop these tools, it's easy to fall into that. You've come from very insecure. Now you become and I did this. I actually used it for the wrong purposes, especially when it came to women. I'll be blunt about it. So now you got to watch that from that standpoint. But if you are doing what you just said, if people outside of your family are getting the benefit of these things better, well, then what you're saying is you're more concerned about yourself ultimately.
Yeah. That point right there, man. I hope that drives home. That just means so much. Yeah. Because really, a lot of this shyness stuff, you can practice it in your own home, right? You can learn to work the home.
Well, but probably the heart of the questions is harder with somebody you see every day.
Yeah.
To really engage, because I can tell you, and Linda will tell you, I can be guilty. When I run into somebody that's doing something new, I am in. Yeah. I mean, I am like, so you see somebody come home every day. How's your day? It's like Groundhog Day and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then it's harder from that standpoint, but that's where it should be. So
good stuff. Hey guys, here's the bottom line. We want you to be able to be living the best life that you are designed to live, to have the opportunities in your life that that really are open to you, right? If it's that job or that relationship, and being held back by fear or pride or whatever it is that's keeping you trapped is living only a percentage or partial part of your life. And so, we just want to encourage you. I know people who have been so paralyzed by shyness that they're alcoholics because the alcohol is the only way that they can
lubricant,
grease the joints,
liquid courage, all those things. And which I want to say something about that real quick.
Yeah,
I said it on a previous podcast. One of the great things I had to realize about myself, because when I had a blackout, I was the life of the party when I was super shy. If that's what happens when you drink alcohol, if you get this natural kind of social side, it's in you.
Yeah.
You don't need the alcohol.
Yeah.
You just need the practice. You just need to just decide you're going to do it. It's not outside of you. It's still coming from this brain in here. So you've got the ability. We've all got the ability.
Yeah.
It's just you get too locked up around, you get too wrapped up in yourself.
Yeah.
And you can't flow.
Yeah.
So
that's good. Good stuff. All right, guys, we want to wrap things up today. We want to thank again Quality Auto Mart, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and 4Speed on 50 Diner. We also want to thank all of you guys. If you find that you are struggling to just make relationships and get connections and networking and that type of thing to the point where it's holding you back, you're not living the life you want. Maybe you're to a point of alcohol or depression or drugs or lost opportunities. Ask for some help. You can contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org. You can call our office at 812-576-7625. Carl, I'm going to put you out on a limb. You are not a personal coach for Rock Solid Families, but you are an incredible coach. I've watched you with so many guys. I can imagine, would you be okay if a guy ever contacted me to connect him with you?
Well, actually, I didn't mention it earlier. I have a shyness boot camp.
Yeah.
It's 9-week. No, I don't. If I can help somebody, I'm going to tell you what you said. Life is just so much fuller.
Yeah.
When you have connections, when you don't isolate. How much has happened in your life simply because of the people you've connected with?
Oh, yeah.
How much? So this is something, if I can help somebody, I'd be more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
More than happy.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please share it, post it, enjoy it, listen to it. All right. So
Thanks.
Go out there and be a strong dad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good deal. Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart and Service for being a proud sponsor of the Strong Dads podcast. Started in 1985 and going strong for all these years. Recently, Quality Auto Mart has transitioned from owners of Mark and Nancy Repke to longtime employee Fred and Lorene Venus. For all your automotive needs and golf cart needs, check out Quality Auto Mart, located across from Indian Lakes on Highway 46 outside of Batesville, Indiana. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.